LEGO finally remade the iconic Black Knights and their signature ship, the Sea Serpent, as a gift with purchase. I finally got my copy in the mail, and while it's about what I expected, there are definitely a few decisions that stop it from living up to the original. So today I want to review it, and then make some simple upgrades to bring it a bit closer to the classic set. The build itself is actually pretty solid, so let's start with what I like. The sail is much better than I initially expected. Sure, the original shape is iconic, but this one works just as well, so I really can't complain. The little Easter egg with the hidden food is a fun addition, and I'm also glad they kept the barrel full of gold along with the goblet on top. I also loved the shaping of the hull. These newer curved pieces worked fantastically on a ship this size, and I honestly hadn't even seen them before. I'm already getting some ideas for custom ship mocks I could build with them. Another thing I really like is how they've angled out the rear section of the ship. Sure, the windows aren't accurate to the original, but this set isn't trying to be a one-to-one remaster. It's a modernized remake that's heavily inspired by it. Changes like this that actually improve the design don't bother me at all. The angle work back here is pretty clean, although my one major complaint is the gaps on these corners. As you'll see later, there isn't really a clean way to fix them without losing a good chunk of minifigure room, so I understand why LEGO left them this way. But enough about the ship for now, let's talk about the minifigures, because I think this is where most of the controversy comes from. These minifigures don't really feel like Black Knights. To be perfectly honest, they remind me a lot more of the 2007 Crown Knights with all the dark blue, silver, and gold, whereas the original Black Knights mainly used red, blue, black, and silver. A big reason for that is that they reused the Griffin Knight torsos with dark blue arms. Now I completely understand why LEGO reused existing prints. Gift with purchases have a limited budget, so they're not going to get a bunch of brand new elements. But that's exactly why I wish they had just made this a standard $20 to $25 retail set instead. LEGO could have then justified making a couple new torso prints, and I think the reception would have been much more positive. The one new print we did get is the shield, but that's also where a lot of people seem divided. I understand what LEGO was going for. They modernized the original design by replacing the yellow with gold and the blue with dark blue, but I think they strayed a little too far from the original. Every other classic Castle Faction remake has stayed pretty faithful to its original color palette. The Forestmen kept their classic green and red, the Black Falcons still look like Black Falcons even if they have some pearl dark gray accents, the Wolfpack stayed brown and black, and the Crusader Lion Knights kept their iconic blue and red. Personally, I'd still love to get these shields on Pick-a-Brick and do a bit of army building, but I'd probably keep them separate from my classic Black Knights. That being said, I still think these guys have a lot of potential, so let's upgrade them a bit. The easiest upgrade is this pair of Doctor Strange legs that kind of look like a dark blue tabard. I originally bought around 150 of these to upgrade my Crown Knights because they're incredibly cheap on Bricklink, but I realized they work just as well here. I also threw together an archer using those same legs along with a Kingdom's chainmail torso with the arms swapped to blue. Then I put together a commander using some basic armor pieces, dragon plumes, and a dark blue cape, and I think he turned out really nice. I would say my criticisms are pretty reasonable and shared by a lot of the community, but at the same time, these upgraded minifigures actually look pretty sick. Hopefully these shields eventually make their way onto Pick-a-Brick, because I definitely like to pick up quite a few of them. Personally though, I want some true Black Knights to crew this ship, and the good news is, we already have the parts to build some great modern versions. For the basic foot soldiers, we can actually keep the Griffin torso since it's already pretty close to the original scale mail design. We'll just swap on some blue and red arms to match the classic color scheme. The new Crusader Lion Knight legs are also perfect since they already include both blue and red printing. Throw on some original Black Knight shields and black helmets, and these already look much closer to the classic minifigures. Next up, we'll make an archer. I'm using the Kingdom's chainmail torso once again, although this time with a classic bullet helmet and the same legs. Again, I think this captures the feel of the original figures much better. Another great option is the Black Falcon legs, if you don't mind incorporating a little pearl dark gray into the color scheme. I paired these with this Knights Kingdom plate armor torso that reminds me a lot of the original figures. Then I topped him off with a Dragon Master's helmet and a blue dragon plume, and I think he looks fantastic. Finally, for the commander, we'll reuse those Black Falcon legs and combine them with the breastplate from the Evil Knight CMF. Add a classic black visor, a red cape, and some dragon plumes, and this is probably my favorite design of the bunch. Now obviously some of these parts haven't been produced in years, and I'm not saying we need this level of variety in a gift with purchase, but imagine if LEGO had instead released this as a $40 battle pack that included the ship, along with a handful of unique Black Knight minifigures. I honestly think most Castle fans would have been so much happier. Either way, if you're looking to build some cheap modern Black Knights, that Griffin torso is actually a fantastic starting point. Now that we've got a proper Black Knight crew for the Sea Serpent, let's start upgrading the ship itself. I do want to preface this by saying I wanted to keep the ship as close to the original design as possible while changing some of the areas that I thought could easily be improved. The overall structure and shape have stayed the same, and every one of these upgrades is doable without completely rebuilding parts of the set. First up is one of my biggest complaints, this tiny flag on the back that doesn't even have a proper flagpole. Let's swap the brown modified 1x2 for a black one, add a lightsaber hilt, and an arrow. Now we've got a proper flagpole. I added an original Black Knight flag, but a standard modern wavy flag would work fine as well. Now, while we're talking about flags, I also wanted to swap the ones on top back to the original yellow and green ones. It's a small change, but I think it helps the ship feel much closer to the classic Sea Serpent. Next up are those awkward gaps along the back that I mentioned earlier. My solution was to stack a couple round 1x1 plates, add one with a bar connection, and attach a Black Knight shield. It's not a perfect fix, but personally I prefer it over leaving the gap exposed. Since the original ship has shields running along the sides, let's add a couple more. All we have to do is readjust the battlements, add a jumper plate with a clip, and attach the shields. If you think that's a little too much, you could always replace the ones in the gaps with blue tiles instead, but I actually like all the Black Knight heraldry. Another thing missing from this remake is the second set of oars. We can move the existing pair onto the snot connection in the middle, then swap in a different blue tile, add a 1x2 slope with a clip, and now we've got room for the second oar just like the original. The last area I really wanted to improve was the front mast. The original Sea Serpent had these red dragon plumes, so those were an easy addition. I also added some rope running from the front mast to the main mast. This was actually included in the original LEGO Ideas submission before being removed from the final set, and I think it adds a cool touch. Finally, let's finish things off with a few more shields. LEGO conveniently left some snot bricks exposed here for the original shields, and we can instead add some classic ones and make the sides of the ship feel much more complete. One change I decided not to make was raising the railings. I do think taller railings would look a little bit better next to minifigures, but keeping them lower also makes the ship stay closer to the proportions of the original set, so I decided to leave them alone. The one issue I still haven't solved is the awkward gap between the battlements and the dark brown slopes around each window section. I didn't want to completely redesign that area, but it's definitely something I might revisit in the future. Overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think these upgrades keep the spirit of the remake while making it feel just a little bit closer to the classic Sea Serpent. If you have any other ideas for modifications, let me know down in the comments because I always enjoy seeing what other people come up with. At the end of the day, I think this is a really fun remake of an iconic castle set, and I'm honestly pretty happy with how the build itself turned out. But I do think making this a $180 gift with purchase held it back quite a bit. If this had just been a $20 to $25 retail set, I think the reception would have been a lot more positive. LEGO would have had more room to include some more unique prints, and fans wouldn't have been looking at a gift with purchase as the only source of new castle sets for the year. That's really the biggest problem with these castle gift with purchases. They show that there's still clearly a lot of interest in the theme, but LEGO seems hesitant to give us the smaller retail sets and battle packs that castle fans have been asking for. Let me know what you think of the Sea Serpent in the comments, and if you were able to pick one up for yourself. If you like LEGO castle content, make sure to subscribe because I make new videos every week. And as always, thank you for watching.